Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keel's Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
It's not every day that you have the opportunity to sit down with someone who you have known for many decades and gets to share his story with you. But today, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the founder and managing partner of Freeflow, Mr. Dave Fleck. Dave, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Billy. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited about you being here. And there's a lot of things that I was like, you know what, do I just start right from the very beginning, letting everybody know that you have really had lots of amazing education. You went to amazing undergraduate university. You have amazing pedigree in terms of what you've done at the graduate school level. And I'll let you tell some of that stuff. But you also have had experiences working not only in the US, but working internationally. And so I'm not going to steal your thunder because I would love for you to help us understand just very quickly a little bit about your backstory. And if you can help us understand what you've done to get to this point in your journey as the founder and managing partner at Freeflow.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'll just start out by just saying, like, I usually describe my career path as having unfolded in 3 different stages. So stage 1 was, so I left Miami University where we met, and then went to be an auditor at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then that quickly became, to me at least, somewhat boring. But my dad actually was like, learn the language of business, learn accounting. If you don't know what you want to do, like, it never hurts to just learn the language of business. And I actually give him tons of credit for that counsel. It's just really understanding balance sheets, P&Ls, cash flows, like being very fluent in those has been super helpful. But I left the auditing group and actually went to what's called the transaction services group, which is really like a M&A and investment advisor group within PwC. And that was a really good move for me because it got me on the deal side, got me on the investment side, and also actually enabled me to eventually move to Paris, where I lived for a couple of years, basically setting up that group or helping set up that group overseas. Mm-hmm. Then we got to, and so that was, phase 1. Then I went to Northwestern for graduate school. After Northwestern, went to Bain and Company for to join that consulting firm, where again I did consulting for mergers and acquisitions, investments, that type of thing. And then that's really the end of like what I call phase 1, because I was tired of being a consultant. PwC and Bain, great brands, great pedigrees, tons of knowledge, but I was like, I want to be like more of a player. I want to make decisions and actually be accountable. So I actually, it was 2005. So I actually was able to get a job as a product manager at Google. So it was kind of early in the Google trajectory. And that enabled me to also move out to California, where I've lived since. So I've moved out here about 20 years ago. I live in Berkeley, California. So moved out to the Bay Area and was a PM at Google, which was like my introduction to compute, which is now, front page in the news every day. And that experience really opened my eyes to like what you can do with compute, how you can find signal in the noise, how you can, really accelerate things quite dramatically by using compute in strategic ways. And after leaving Google, I had the startup bug. And so I stayed there for a little while and then left to actually just become what I describe as like the first non-founder management team member at a handful of different startups. The last one, and it was like a typical startup experience, right? Like some of them had success, some of them did not. And then the last one I was at for about 7 years, and that was the I think the most, excuse me, the most successful of them, it was a company by the name of Discuss, which was an online engagement platform. So, uh, Union Square Ventures was the prime, the lead investor in that one, and particularly a guy by the name of Fred Wilson, who's actually one of the founders of that firm. And he became, kind of a friend and mentor to me during that process. And I also just saw how venture could be done in in maybe a different way than what I had seen before, and experienced before. Like, it was just a really good experience with him and his firm. Uh, and so when we sold that company in 2017, that's kind of the end of what I call phase two, which is like that Google/startup phase of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I started to go, what I want to do now, and I really always loved, just the startup energy and experience and that journey. And I realized I wanted to work with a bunch of different startups. And what I realized pretty early on was, like, the way you do that actually is just basically by becoming a VC. Like, if you want to kind of scale your exposure to different startups, or an angel investor, of course. But I wanted to do it as my career, and I didn't have the balance sheet, to basically say I'm going to just be an angel investor and just do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also couple that with the fact that, actually selling Discuss was concurrent with the birth of our third kid. And so I'm sitting there holding my daughter Fiona and going, like, if I'm going to be on the other side of the table, actually, I want to work on stuff, because I have three kids. I was like, I want to work on stuff that deals with the hard problems.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, I was a little bit, I don't know, just wondering why VC and why capital had not maybe gone as much to what I call the existential important problems facing humanity, like the human health and planetary health stuff. That's how I started to frame it in my mind was,
Mm-hmm.
I want to work on human health, planetary health, because I had lost some loved ones for reasons that I thought maybe could have been preventable. I care about our planet and just think that there's things that we're doing that are just not sustainable, and just actually said, you know what, I think if we go after the big problems, I think investor returns can follow
Mm-hmm.
by solving those big problems. And so I started to spend actually a lot of time around Caltech, because uh, that's, my wife's from Pasadena, and so there's just some embedded relationships with some of the principal investigators and professors and people like that were in place. And so I started to spend time there. I was just curious about that institute in particular, because there hadn't been as many startups coming out of there, at least from what I had seen. And so as I started to spend time there, I started to ask these amazing scientists, like, that's great research, but are you going to actually create a company around that and solve this big problem?
Mm-hmm.
And I kept getting the answer that, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know the right people to talk to for capital. Um, I don't know how to build a team. Just a bunch of I don't know statements. And that just led me to say, well, wait a second. Maybe there's an opportunity here to set up something that can be helpful to these scientists as they spin companies out of their labs. And so that led to phase three of my career, which is Freeflow, which is about 6 years ago now. Started the firm, and along with my partner Kevin, who's been an amazing part of this journey. And now we have another partner, Steve, and we just saw that there was this amazing opportunity to actually embed inside of an institution and work with the scientists to help them spin companies out of the labs. And that has now resulted in about 35 different companies over the last 6 years. We now have about 100 million in assets under management. We've now actually expanded the model to include Berkeley, because ironically, Berkeley's in my backyard, but the same things we saw at Berkeley, or the same things we saw at Caltech, which is basically an underserved ecosystem, is also present here at Berkeley. So we're now working embedding ourselves within Berkeley and spinning companies out of the labs at Berkeley too. So let me just pause there.
Yeah, and it's given us a really great insight into the three different phases, as you call it. You know, you've got your phase 1, your phase 2, and then the most recent phase that you're currently in. And there seems to be a recurring theme. At the same time, I want to make sure that our audience, our listeners, our going along family, that they also understand that aside from just solving the problem and being able to solve it because of things that have happened in your life, as you mentioned, the things that happened for you and you were looking for solutions, there's something that I think sometimes people don't really understand in this giving nature that you have and looking to solve problems. I want to ask you something that's not related to that, but also to help us give some more insight into you. I know that one of the things that you truly care about is homelessness, and it is being able to also look to eradicate it. And so that leads you to volunteering in organizations like Family Promise. Could you talk to us a little bit about that and where that desire, that motivation comes from to also want to be able to eradicate things like family homelessness?
Yeah, man. Oh man, thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's Family Promise, so it's family homelessness. That's the one that I've specifically chosen to get engaged with.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that I put it, and my father actually, before he passed away, was very involved with this on a local level. So that's actually how I got involved, was just by looking at what he was doing and then actually deciding that after he passed away to get involved in my own way. And that was on the technology side. And they said, oh, you should meet the national people. And then I just ended up joining the board. So I've been on the board there now for about 8 years. But it's because I firmly believe that every family should have a home, and specifically within the word family is usually embedded, the concept of the child, right? So that every child should have a home. And so for me, family homelessness is this interesting large subset of homelessness that is focused on the children. And so for me, and of course there's single people that are homeless. There's all sorts of different ways this problem manifests itself. But to me, the fact, the child homelessness just like cuts through all the BS, because I think sometimes people can be judgy about, and right or wrong, I'm not trying to like take a position on it, but just like, I just believe that it's hard to say that any child has done anything that warrants the fact that they're homeless. And so it just like clears away all the BS. And so it just comes from that, actually, just like, oh my gosh, like, and it's just this perpetual, the data is clear, right? Like if you're homeless as a child, it just sets you up on a different path. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, and whatever the expression is, like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? It's just like, if we can attack the problem earlier, it actually can really impact things. And for those who are just more fiscally oriented, save money. I mean, if that's, impact, to me, it's more about the people, but for those who are more just concerned about budgets, it actually just saves a ton of money by actually going after the problem a lot sooner.
Well, and I appreciate you highlighting that, right? Because this also goes to the focus of your time, effort, energy, and being able to once again solve a problem and a problem that does affect many people. And so I wanted to highlight that. But if we can, I wanted to also come back to, because so many people that are watching or listening are they're in the probably in that phase 2 of your life that you were talking about, and they've finished phase 1, they're in phase 2, they've probably been there for 10 years, something like that, and we've both been in large corporations. There's great benefits, there's great salary, and if especially on the larger side, right? I mean, it's probably going back to your PwC and your Bain stuff. And there's a tendency to say, well, look, this is a really good life. Like, why would I leave this place? And for whatever reason, there were, you talked about having some combination or experiences with startup. But I'm just curious, what was it for you that made you say, you know what, I really would like to lean more towards when you had the opportunity to stay within the constructs of a big company or another company. And instead of doing that, you decided, you know what, I've had these experiences, but I actually want to go out and do this on my own and really solve specific issues on my own. Because you had that choice and you made it. But maybe if you could walk us through a little bit of what your thought process was.
Yeah, well, it's actually at each stage. Like there was like I'm at PwC and Bain, great brands, and the partners are like, "Oh yeah, you're on partner track, and you know, and here's what that life looks like." And I looked at that life, and I'm like, "That life doesn't look that. It looks fine,
Mm,
you know. It looks great for others, but it was just listening to my gut, you know. And I was like, that's
mm,
not it. And then I went to Google, and it's like, oh, that's great, you know. And I think I would have actually made it, or who knows, but like, you know, at least
yeah.
my balance sheet would be different if I had stayed maybe at any of those actually. I mean, I think longer term in the venture business, it'll probably end up, you know, being a good place for me. But like,
Mm,
you know, but the short term money is probably there, like with the PwC or shorter term,
mhm.
Bain, Google. But none of those felt right, you know, and that's just what's the best way to put it? The trying to fast forward to when I'm 80,
Mhm.
you know, God willing, or and looking back going, oh man, do I have any regrets?
Right.
Like that's the thing that I think I try to, and sometimes I lose track of that, but I do try to like look at life through that. Like, am I going to regret anything here?
Mm,
And sometimes, and I think that's been a reason why I've made certain changes, because it's almost like listening to your gut or listening to that. I call it anxiety
mm,
about, okay, is this really what I want to do? Is this, and it goes back to I remember when I was young, just my parents saying, hey, I mean, if go after whatever excites you the most. And it's
yeah.
actually what I tell our founders too, is like,
Mhm.
because a lot of them are working on scientific problems, various scientific problems. And I tell them, I'm like, don't go after the thing that you think is the biggest thing to make money, because
Mm,
that's usually for at least for me and for my archetype and the archetype of the scientist founders I work with,
mhm.
that's not sustainable. It's not going to be able to drive a 10-year energy. You have to,
Yeah.
you know, usually you have to go after what excites you and what basically provides like an insatiable curiosity. And that's what pulls you through those like really shitty times, you know, where
Mm,
it's like really hard.
yeah.
Um, so yeah.
So and so then Dave, when you are, because I know you also, you know, you're talking to your founders or you're mentoring people or people are asking you a question, but I'm also talking to that person that is thinking to themselves, well, you know what, I got to this point in my life, because this is one of the things that happens is quite frequently there is that inner voice, there's that gut, but that gut that is telling them, or the, like I like to say, the soft voice that they just continue to ignore. Like you're like, I don't want to hear it because my life is feeling really good. I'm getting my paycheck every 2 weeks or every month or whatever the case may be. Or, hey, I really want to move overseas, but you know what? It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. And not everybody is exactly the same. I mean, I know I had some of that was going on for a long time in a number of different life phases. But kind of how do you address that for the person who is maybe asking that question, or they're really just trying to ignore the voice that they've been putting off for like a year or a year and a half or two?
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's almost, you know, like listening to your body, right? Like if your knee is hurting you for a day, that's one thing. If it's hurting you for a week, it's like, oh, okay. If it's hurting you for a month, uh-oh. Hurting
Yeah.
you for a year or two, you got to see the doctor. Or maybe it's
Yeah.
even the month. Like you have to, so it's just not going to generally, I find it's not going to get better
No.
on its own if it continues to linger there. And then it just becomes um, yeah, I don't know. It can like, carry over into other facets of life. You know, you start to become shorter with your kids or with your spouse, or because there's just this this malignancy that
Yep.
is growing inside, and it just, I don't know. And I fully appreciate that not everyone has the I mean, everyone has their own journey, has their own risk profile, has their own
Yep.
personal balance sheet,
Yep.
or, to try riskier things, or I do believe there are moments that are like the right moments, and there are times where it's like, okay, yeah, that's a little bit on the riskier side to do it at that moment.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that people still won't do something in that moment, but just be thoughtful about it. For me personally, it's a lot, hopefully it's going to be a long life, right?
Yep.
And so when I made the phase 3 decision to start this, I
Mhm.
was 44. Yeah, I think I was 44.
Yep.
And so yeah, that was just the phase of my life, and I could have gotten there more quickly, but that just happens to be when it kind of coalesced for me on all the fronts that mattered. And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is the right time for me.
Yeah.
And I plan to do this the rest of my life. Right. So, I mean, that's the thing, that it's not work for me. What I'm doing right now is not work. And so, to find something like that is just, yeah, like my kids are 11, 10, and 7, and to be able to talk to them about finding something that doesn't feel like work,
Mhm.
because if you find something that doesn't feel like work, and if you're particularly if you're in the business world and you find something that doesn't feel like work,
Mhm.
it usually means the money will follow
Yep.
if you're doing it because you're going to do a great job. So, and so either way, if you're in other fields and you find something that doesn't feel like work, I mean, I think, it may be harder to find to carve out, or to make that living that you need. But if you're in the business world, I always say, like, if you're doing something you're passionate about, the money usually just follows because it's business, right?
Yep.
Um, so, so either way.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective, and especially when you can start to think about the life lessons that you are able to share with your kids. For instance, you're thinking, "Hey, listen, I'm
Hmm.
doing something that doesn't feel like work." Um, and if I take back to the beginning of what you said, and I think that's the real lesson is to say, "Hey, look, it's not going anywhere." Like I remember, there was something that was calling me to Europe back in the day. I finished my first corporate role, and I was like, I'd been listening to it for 2 or 3 years while I was traveling around the world. And I was like, you know what? It's just getting louder. And so I have to at least scratch
Yeah,
this itch to figure out, okay, well, and asking myself at a certain point, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Which also ties into what you were talking about. The
yeah,
context is everything, right? I made that move. And if I bring it back to myself at that moment in time, because it was really just about me. And well, now I've got kids, as you know, and I travel with my 2 boys all over the world at this point in time. But it's a different type of thing. So context definitely makes a decision, is one of the factors in the decisions that you're making. So um,
yeah. Well, and what I usually find is, and I remember this, it's kind of in the rearview mirror, so I'd actually forgotten this till now, but like in that phase 1, 2, and 3 construct that we talked about,
mhm.
I remember when I left Price Waterhouse, and then when I left Bain, and even when I left Google, all of them were, afterwards kept saying, "Hey, come back whenever you want,
Yeah,
friendly, you can always come back, and I think that that's just usually true, I mean,
yeah,
and so if you once you've reached a certain spot on the mountain, if you want to use the climbing analogy,
yeah,
you can usually come back to it. It may not be the same firm or the same team, and that usually maybe isn't even what you want to do anyway, because it's like, mix it up if you want to
yeah,
go back, but like it's usually there. So
yeah,
I view it almost as like I think there's a pretty big safety net there.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, do you want to time box it? I call it time boxing, where you just say, you know what, I'm going to do it for a year. I'm going to
yeah,
run after this problem really hard for a year. It's going to cost me X amount of money if I have zero income. and just see what I can do for a year or whatever the time frame might be. And then if it's not coming together, then I always have that. It's still there.
Yep. I fully agree with you. And I'm smiling. So if you are watching us on the video, you probably saw me smiling as Dave was talking about that. And it makes me think like that time boxing concept that you mentioned. I gave myself a 1-year time box back in 2001. I said I was going to, even though I wasn't really sure, this voice was calling me. I went for that 1-year sabbatical in Paris. It's now been 24 years and counting, 3 countries, 2 kids, a marriage, a divorce, corporate life. And so all of those things that you just mentioned, if I give that concrete example, yeah, I mean, I could have gone back a year later, but listen, I gave myself the opportunity. And from there, fortunately, continued to grow in those spaces. And I guess if any point in time, I think my passport still works, I could still go back home if I wanted to your point. You mind if we jump back into phase 3? Because I know this is something that is very unique to you. And I know I want us to talk about what you're doing at Freeflow and some of the very specific challenges that you are looking to help companies solve, right? But also you had something that was very special to or unique to what you were doing when you were in your big corporate career. You had the opportunity to work both on the buy and the sell side of transactions. And I'd love to know what that experience or those 2 different experiences, how that's actually helping you today in terms of making decisions for your company on behalf of investors.
Yeah. I mean, just comfort in I don't think I even appreciated, because I wasn't a VC before becoming a VC. So it's
right. Exactly.
Or before founding a firm.
Yep.
Before founding a venture firm, I wasn't a VC, which is, I think just to some, at least initially, I think some people were like, whoa, it's a bigger jump. But I believed in myself, but I also knew that I had all that experience on the buy sell side, just in transactions. I don't know how many I worked on over those years at PwC and Bain, but 100 plus transactions. Maybe it's even hundreds. I don't even know, but it's just very comfortable in that environment. And just, that language of business. So just knowing, being very comfortable in budgets and forecasts and P&Ls and income statements and cash flows and doing due diligence. I mean, that's pretty much what all that time was about. So just, it's different diligence when you're looking at a startup coming out of an academic lab, but it's still the same principles. Basically, are you getting to a yes? What does it take to get to a yes? And so that's probably the best way to describe it. Is just it's a pretty different game at the late stage, because most of what I was doing was late stage. I'd say is more private equity. I did some venture at PwC and Bain, but it's more at the it was more at the later stages. So more what I would call private equity or buyout. But at the end of the day, it's still deals and getting investments done and understanding all the various components that go into that.
Hey, Dave, so just one thing, I want to ask you to maybe give a very quick overview, because there's some people who have, you've got big corporate jobs and you're doing lots of different things, but there's some language that you've used, and I just want to make sure people understand what it is that you're talking about. So when you say private equity versus venture capital versus angel, can you just help situate someone that may not be familiar with those terms?
Yeah. So there is an asset class that is generally called private equity, which is long duration investments in private companies generally, or private entities, not publicly listed stocks, that type of thing. Within that asset class of private equity, there's the earlier stage. That's like getting companies off the ground. That's the stuff that I do. And it can be all the way through IPO, but that's the venture capital component. And those are usually longer duration investments. Those are sometimes 10, 12-year investments.
Hmm.
Because when you think about something coming out of the lab or maybe more colloquially like, Airbnb or Uber or, where I worked, Google, it just takes a while for something once Sergey and Larry had the idea while doing their, PhD thesis and spinning out the company. I think they incorporated it, I forget, in maybe 99 or 2000. It just takes a little while for those things to materialize and grow.
Hmm.
And then also within private equity, there's what's called buyout or leveraged buyout, LBO, which is definitely much more in the later stage. That's generally finding companies uh, that people think are promising companies and doing well, but that maybe have the ability to cut some costs or merge together a few of them to, again, remove costs, to use leverage, i.e., debt on the balance sheet to maybe goose performance. So that's more late stage. And then there's other various types of private equity like real estate, other components too. And then so that's the private equity asset class. And then angel investing is when you as an individual start to invest in companies, usually it's smaller, or it depends on your balance sheet, but oftentimes smaller investments into companies. So you're not usually leading rounds, but you're coming into a round that's coming together for an early stage company.
Okay. Perfect. And that just helps to situate everyone so you know that we are talking about an asset class. And if I were to even make it more layman's, it just really depends on what part of the process or of the life cycle of the company that you are coming in with potential capital. Basically.
Mm-hmm.
If I okay,
Yep.
if I make
Yep.
it really, really simple. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. I want to bring this back to Freeflow, if we can, and I'd really like to have you talk to us more about, you talked about investing in human and planetary health challenges, looking to solve specific problems because you kept hearing like we just don't know what the next point is, or we don't know, or I don't know. I think is what you kept saying. I don't know who the teams are. Or I don't know how to build this, or I don't know how to do that. And so you have now come together. With your other founders at this point. I said nine. I heard you say it, three of you. And being able to talk to us about Freeflow, how you're going about that, and how you're actually adding value, not just to solving these problems, but also to your investors. We have people here that are also interested in understanding, like, hey, look, is this something I can be a part of? And if you can just give us more insight into that, would be great.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. So what we did, the things that I talked about in my first presentation, really to myself, you have to kind of convince yourself that you want to do this. So, and the things that I talked about in my initial free flow deck are three things. One, uh, focus on human health, planetary health, generally enabled by compute. So how can you do things? How can you do drug discovery using using computer science, new types of materials, uh, carbon capture, and some of these, and they obviously touch the physical world, but
Mm-hmm.
there's usually a compute element to these that you can actually just accelerate things by. The second thing is focus on institutes that are underserved by venture capital. So that's Caltech, that's now Berkeley, places where are, top 5, top 10 research institutes in the world
Mm-hmm.
that are in my backyard that are just not being, uh, not getting the love, that are in the backyard of some of the largest VC firms in the world. But they're, the way I describe it is people are generally lazy. Like they're not hopping in the car and driving, from Palo Alto to Berkeley, which takes on a bad traffic day like an hour and a half. Um, Same with Caltech. It's on the east side of LA. the money is on the west side. On a bad
Mm,
traffic day, it takes about an hour and a half to drive there. And people just aren't doing that. And by
mm,
not doing that, they are, in my humble opinion, creating a massive opportunity for us,
mm,
which is okay.
mm,
Um, and then number three, we then serve these founders with what we describe as non-science value add, which basically means, myself and my other partners, we're not PhDs. We're not trying to hire a team of PhDs. We are scrappy early stage people. Like we are hustling with our founders, and that is what we bring to the table. We bring that early stage energy, knowledge, and just try to make sure that we help them uh, on their journey. And and that oftentimes means like helping them avoid the landmines that are there, that are oftentimes stepped on and blow things up. And so just making sure that we're just there as partners to them in their journey.
excellent. So looking at those three different areas, and as I mentioned earlier, founders, I meant you and your other partners, as you help to navigate other founders with that. So, and that gives us some insight into really how you go about it, the reason behind going about it, and I guess the kind of maybe as we start to wrap up things here is when you talk about the different areas that you want to help bring solutions to, and doing the work that others are not wanting to. Where do you see as the next kind of what's the next big opportunity that you see that you can help investors be a part of?
Hmm. Well, it's, and let me know if I've misunderstood the question, but I think it's continuing on the stuff that we have. I mean, we have this huge opportunity in front of us at Caltech and Berkeley. Now, people always ask us, and we've even been approached by, I won't name them, but other world class universities and research institutes, and they've said, "Hey, you interested? Would you take a peek at us and any interest in maybe replicating that model over here?" And I have, basically tell them like, not no, not yet, at least, because we're very like that discipline has really served us well by
Mm.
just going, for a while we're just Caltech,
Yep.
and now we're just Caltech and Berkeley. Like that, maybe the huge lesson that I've learned is just the power of the word no
Mm.
in life is like that's the most powerful. It's a very powerful word, and it can clean things up. I think both professionally and personally. But on the professional front, by saying no, by setting the discipline and saying the boundary, if you will, like if you're coming to us and you're from Stanford or from Oxford or Cambridge, we're just not interested because that's just not what we do. And so it just lets us really focus in on the things that where we are building our brand and building our ecosystem actually. Um, so yeah, that's and so in the future, I don't know where this journey takes us. I didn't when I launched the firm, I didn't actually I didn't envision doing anything in addition to Caltech.
Mm.
Um, but I also am not dogmatic about it. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, my goodness, I mean, I didn't realize that this was a more endemic problem. Actually,
Mm.
I think I thought it was maybe just a one-off at Caltech because it was a unique situation. But what we're finding is that it's a much more endemic problem.
Mm.
Now, in translating science out into the world, you know, I actively encourage other people that are, maybe looking at what we're doing and doing it at other places, and even if they want to come into ecosystems where we're already present,
Mm.
what I say is like, what I say to Berkeley, what I say to Caltech, the leadership there, I'm like, I don't want any special terms, like we should be showing it on the field every day. And if we're providing the best product, then founders are going to choose us. And if we're not, then they won't. And that's the way it should be. So I think that's pretty much, the next phase of this for us is just executing on what we have in front of us. Is that
Yeah, and I
getting
mean,
to your
yeah, and so
question?
well, this goes right into the the inside of the founder, right? And this goes to the basis of the question is continue to go deeper where you already have where you see an opportunity. It's an opportunity that has not been fully resolved or exploited, depending on positively exploited, if you will, and also being able to recognize that that's where you will continue to do your focus. I think it also shares or says a lot about just from the founder perspective, this idea of an abundant mindset, right? And not just saying it, but actually, showing it, and whether or not you are showing it, it just, because sometimes people could take a different mindset, and I love hearing that from you. And so, it definitely gives me and it gives our audience more insight into you. And I cannot believe how quickly this time flies, man. I can't believe it. But before we go, there's two things that I do want to ask you. And the first is you've walked us through the three phases that you call the three phases of your life. And you didn't know when you were founding Freeflow that you would be where you are today. As we mentioned before, over 100 million in assets under management, over 30 different companies, over 100 different investors. This was starting because you wanted to be able to help solve a problem. But I want you to think about, let's say you can talk to Dave, because you mentioned, be around here until you're 90, till you're 100, whatever. But I don't want you to talk to Dave that's 50 years out. I just want you to talk to your future self who's 3 years out. Knowing what you know now, what is it that you would like to tell yourself that you're going to listen to 3 years from now? Because I'll still be here doing the podcast. And I'd love for you to share what bit of insight or encouragement you would share with Dave 3 years from now.
Generally, it's served me well, and the older I get, the more I realize this to be the case, that just go for it. Like, hit the accelerator a little bit harder. And yeah, I think that's been something that's taken me a while to realize in my career. And I think I remember there were times that in starting this firm where, you have, and I remember telling people about this at the time. I mean, you're taking me in a little bit of a time machine now, but where, I'd wake up at X time in the middle of the night and just go, oh man, like the anxiety was just painful. And sometimes the way that I treated that anxiety was by actually just like rolling out of bed to my stand-up desk and just cranking for a little while, because that was the way that I alleviated that at that moment. I don't know if that's the healthiest way to do it all the time, but I think there is, I think, a certain, if you're taking the path, at least that, like creating your own company, or I think there are those moments where you just have to really realize that it can be all encompassing, and that's okay. I mean, it shouldn't be that way, or try not to use the word should, but I hope it's not that way forever. But yeah, I think there's just this, and then now with where we're at, I mean, if you had told me 6 years ago when I launched the firm that we'd be at where we're at now, I basically would be like, pinch me. I mean, that's freaking amazing. But in the day to day, I oftentimes, I won't say always, but I oftentimes lose track of that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, dang it, why isn't this or that? But
Yeah.
dude, I mean, come on. I mean, it is like I'm so happy and fortunate, not only professionally, but personally too.
Yeah.
So I think the same lessons, we talk about those things sometimes too, but
Yeah.
just think those same lessons apply on the personal side too, where it's like, sure, things be maybe different or in air quotes better. Yeah, maybe, but it's pretty damn good,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And so either way, but with that comes, that's why I say stomp on the accelerator a little bit, because sometimes when you're going after something, it's like, yeah, I mean, what do you have to lose?
Mm.
Let's keep going, man. I mean, if it's all good, and if you have those safety nets now that are in place, because pretty much I think those safety nets that I described earlier about, you can always go back to, I could always go back to PwC or Bain or Google. I think even within Freeflow, I think there's safety nets that are now there. So it's like,
Yeah.
and keep going hard. Yeah, because also the energy that I have, I don't know what is in store in my life, but it's also I just want to make sure that, to me, it's something that is an energy giver. So I want to make sure to capitalize on the fact that right now I'm healthy and can do this, and I think it's important stuff. So I just want to push it hard, because I feel like these scientists are actually solving really important problems. It's what I call my get out of bed in the morning insurance,
Yeah.
is the fact that I'm working on stuff that really motivates me.
Hmm.
Um, so I just, for all your listeners out there, I just, whatever gets you out of bed in the morning, where you're like, let's do this,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I hope that my kids can find at some point in their life, professionally. And I just hope that I would just wish that on everybody, that they can find something that just really excites them to get their day going and to solve that problem.
Well, I love that. And I stay with go for it as you continue to be able to focus your time, effort, and energy on something that really truly motivates you. It's the thing that you're looking to continue to solve a problem. If I think about from the very beginning of the conversation, when you talked about the interactions that you had with your father and the influence that he had on you, and then being able to go and figure out, okay, how do you then translate that and learn the language of business, and being able to not only study that through an undergrad, but also through grad, and then being able to put that in practical application, whether that was in the U.S., if that was in France and other countries, then being able to move from phase one to phase two and continue to grasp more and more of the knowledge, taking the theory, putting it into practice, having the good fortune of also not even realizing that what you were doing, whether you were on buy side, sell side, using the financial knowledge that you had, being able to bring all of that together, be able to successfully exit a company, and then realize, you know what, you want to take this and be able to do this on your own, help other companies solve issues. And then based on where you were, you heard different professors at Caltech that were saying, well, they were solving problems, but they didn't know what to do next. So you took all of that knowledge that you had from before, being able to now say, you know what, let me go out and found a company that will allow me to help these other professors solve their problems through business, the same language that you were looking to learn and perfect early on. And now you've continued to do that with numerous companies, also allowing numerous investors to be able to help you solve these problems. And so I know that I get to understand more about what it is that you do, the way that Freeflow is helping others. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that want to know, you know what, Fleck, your story is like really, really inspiring. Also, too, how you are out in the board of trustees and being able to help volunteer in family homelessness. How can we find out more about you? How can we get in touch with you? Please, 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 Dave, help us understand how we can find out more about you and what you're doing at Freeflow.
Yeah. So the website is freeflow.io. Feel free to email me. My email is david@freeflow.io. And Family Promise, I believe is familypromise.org if people are so inclined to check that entity out. So yeah, those would be the main, and people can connect with me on LinkedIn too. I'm not as good at responding to messages I receive on LinkedIn, but I definitely usually actually accept anyone that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm definitely on, I'm on LinkedIn too. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, listen, like I said in the very beginning, it's not every day you get to speak to a friend that you've known for a while, someone who is also a businessman, someone who's made decisions in life and has also said, you know what, I don't want to live with the coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself and the entire Going Long family. Thank you very, very much for deciding to invest your time with me and with us today. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. It's been fun.